Today I'm at Leeds Golf Club in their golf cave and I'm going to be testing out the new SIM2 range from TaylorMade. I'm going to be seeing how the SIM2 and the SIM2 Max models compare and also if there are any improvements from last year's SIM models. The new technology behind this range is really exciting and I have to say these are some of the best looking clubs I have ever seen. So I am super excited to get these on the launch monitor and test them out. I still can't get over just how good this looks. That went a long way. I have to say, this looks ridiculously good over the ball. I love the way you can see that electric blue from the back of the club head that just creeps up onto the crown. And actually this stock shaft with a little bit of blue on it also kind of matches in with the head really nicely. Okay, so that carried 231 yards and I'm definitely pretty happy with that. Woo, that was good. I just carried that 235 yards. I don't think I ever hit a driver that far. Like, literally ever. Okay, this is definitely the longest driver I have tested to date. I've just averaged 232 yards carry across those 10 balls there. That's ridiculous. So the shortest carry I recorded was at 227, which is probably longer than most drivers I've hit this year. And the longest was up at 237, which is definitely my longest shot of the year so far. But I have to say the dispersion was pretty left biased. I was starting these pretty near on line, but I was hitting quite a big draw with them all. Now, to be honest, I always think that the TaylorMade drivers are slightly draw biased, and I don't mind that at all because I think for a large majority of golfers, they're wanting to counterbalance a fade or a slice. So I think in general that technology really helps people. It just so happens I hit a draw, so it doesn't always work out best for me. But obviously we've got numerous options on the hosel here to adjust this, and because the shot shape was so consistent, I really wouldn't be worried about this at all because it could definitely just be a tweak of the lie angle or the loft on here to get that flight where I want it to be. Right, let's see how the SIM Max offering compares. It's definitely got a lot to try and live up to now. That actually felt a bit more solid than the SIM model. I'm not really sure why, but I did actually prefer the feel a little bit. Okay, so that was quite interesting because I'm not gonna lie, I didn't strike that last shot very well at all. And if anything, it was a little bit off the toe as well. And it's still flown 226 yards and pretty damn straight. I mean, I'd be very happy with that on the course if I thought I hadn't hit a very good shot at all. That one was rather nice. Not gonna lie, when I hit that, I felt like it was going miles left and it was still pretty damn straight. So weird. So I've hit 10 balls there and as I expected, it didn't quite go as far as the SIM2, but I have to say I'm still pretty impressed with the distance here as it averaged up at 229 yards. Now in terms of some of the other variables, it performed very similar to how I'd expect. It launched about a degree higher than the SIM2 and it also had about an extra 200 RPM of spin. But then in terms of dispersion, I have to say there wasn't that much difference between the two, but then I didn't strike it quite as good with this model and the dispersion was still the same, so maybe there is some extra forgiveness in this head as well. Now we've seen just how the new models perform, let's get last year's sim range out and see just how they stack up in terms of distance and dispersion. I forgot just how light this is over the ball and it looks a lot lighter now after seeing the other one. And I loved the looks of this last year, but I have to say TaylorMade have done a great job of making it even better, which I didn't actually think was possible. After going back to this model, I definitely prefer the sound from the SIM2 range. This just sounds a bit more higher pitched and not quite as solid. So I have to say, I struck those shots pretty well. And I was thinking, oh, maybe I'm just having a good day with drive today and hitting it a bit further than normal. And then I looked at the data and I averaged 225 yards with the sim. So nearly a 10-yard drop off compared to the SIM2. Now don't get me wrong, I still had a couple of shots which snuck up into the 230s. My longest shot was at 232, which was 5 yards shorter than my longest shot with the SIM2 at 137. But on average my distance just wasn't as consistent. I definitely had a bigger front to back dispersion in terms of distance, and also on average my distance was shorter. Now the other thing that's quite surprising is that my club head speed was actually higher with the sim compared to the new SIM2 model, so even though I was swinging it faster, I wasn't getting as much distance out of it. Now in terms of ball flight, they flew pretty similar and the spin wasn't that much different between the two models. I also definitely had that draw bias shot still, but probably not as extreme as in the SIM2, and the dispersion was a bit more equal to both sides, so I lost a couple to the right as well. Overall, if we look at all the data together, you can just see that my dispersion is a lot tighter with the SIM2 models compared to last year's sim, and also I was getting more distance. Right, finally we've got last year's SIM Max offering. This was the one I was actually fitting to last year, so it's going to be really interesting to see how it compares to this year's models. I can't really get over the fact that I just had my fastest club head speed of this test at 99.7 miles an hour, and the shot only went 219 yards. Anyway, again compared to this year's SIM2 Max offering, I definitely saw a drop in distance, with my average distance here being 223 compared to 229 with the SIM2 Max. My longest shot was up at 232 compared to 236 with the SIM2 Max, and just in general the distance definitely wasn't consistent throughout the test compared to this year's offerings. Now in terms of launch angle, this was pretty on the mark compared to this year's new model, but the spin was noticeably 200 RPM higher. Now it's safe to say all 4 models I've tested here are pretty easy to draw, but this was the one that I missed the furthest left out of all 4 I've tested, which I was pretty surprised with. If anything, I would have expected it to be last year's sim model rather than the sim max. Overall, when you look at the 4 dispersion rings of these different drivers, it's clear to see this year's new offerings are just significantly better. Right, that's all for today. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below or send me a line on Twitter or Instagram. I'll be back reviewing the rest of the SIM2 range soon, so make sure you've subscribed and turn on notifications so you see when these videos arrive. And if you're after more golf content, head to the National Club Golfer social media channels for more.